Lost everything. His
Lost
wealth,
everything.
status,
Yeah.
exiled. He's out of his hometown.
Out of
Essentially?
hometown. Because of those traumatic experience, he got a stroke. So he spent the rest of his life
Paralyzed.
So did you guys know that there is no freedom of speech, no freedom of religion, no freedom of movement in North Korea?
I actually did.
Okay.
I knew the first two. I don't know if it was clear on freedom of movement. I also don't entirely know how limited that could be. Yeah.
So there is no freedom of travel. So if you wanted to travel from one place to another, you would have to go to the local government and you would have to get a traveling document, and then you would get on a train and you would have to sign like, I will come back within like certain time periods.
Right. And some of the listeners might be thinking of, well, that happens in certain countries. It's called a passport. But that's not what you're talking about. We're not talking about international travel.
No.
Just to go to the town next door.
Right. Yeah. So think about like you're traveling from, like, let's say San Francisco to Los Angeles, because I'm in California. Like you would have to go to local center, San Francisco, like the police station, get a traveling document to go to Los Angeles. And there is no freedom of like foreign cultures as well, because North Korea has this ideology called self-reliance, meaning that we depend on no one and we believe in ourselves. Therefore, we are going to do everything by ourselves. Therefore, being heavily influenced by Western culture could lead to your destruction in North Korea. And that's what happened to my grandfather.
Wow.
So my grandfather, my maternal side of the grandfather, he once helped write a North Korean national anthem.
Wow.
So he, so he was a man with high social rankings and social status. And my grandmother, my maternal side of the grandmother, she was a translator that was working for North Korean regime and Chinese government. And they used to live in Pyongyang. And my mom had two older sisters, which they were all musicians, not the magic kind. My mother sang; she played violin, and my second aunt played flute, and my oldest aunt, she played cello. And one day, when my grandfather was actually influenced by the foreign medias and, playing think about playing 70s rock bands, listening to that kind of like a music and into that kind of culture actually got him fired from his job. And and he lost everything, because North Korea lives on rations, right? So they get rations monthly from the government and they live off of that. And my maternal family never, after my grandfather was kicked out of the Pyongyang, and he never got that, and he was deported to a small town called the Changjin in the province of Hamgyeongnam-do, where I was born.
Wow. So just for listening to some rock music, that was his crime.
That is correct. Yeah. So being
and his job was to write anthems.
Right. He was a musician. He was supposed to write propaganda musics for the regime. So every TV channels, like all of those bands, like he was in charge of writing those kind of music. And he was in this Western culture too much. And Kim Jong-il didn't like that.
Wow.
And he's like, get out of Pyongyang and you're done.
Lost everything. His
Lost
wealth,
everything.
Status, exiled. He's out of his hometown.
Out of hometown. Yeah, because he was born and raised in Pyongyang he lived there for his entire life, and now he comes to this small middle of nowhere kind of town, and because of those traumatic experience, he got a stroke. So he lost half of his legs, so he spent the rest of his life paralyzed.
Waist down.
And he spent rest of his life on his bed. And my paternal side of the family, however, my paternal grandfather, he was a Chinese soldier that came out to aid the North Korean regime during Korean War. And after the war ceased-fired, because the war is still going on.
Right.
It actually never officially ended.
That's right. That ceasefire is still ongoing, and the war never reached any peace treaty. So technically, it's still ongoing.
It's still ongoing, yeah. And my grandfather came out during that time, and he stayed back in North Korea because during the 1953, I guess North Korea was richer than China. So I guess living in North Korea meant like better lives for these Chinese soldiers. So
hard to imagine.
Hard to imagine now. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and my grandfather didn't return to China. He met my grandmother, and I don't know how, like, because my grandfather didn't speak any Korean, and my grandmother didn't speak any Chinese, but they met and they made it happen, So,
wow.
so it's
power of love.
The power of love. It's very interesting.